Hi, my name is Jeff Cassman, and this is Catholic Men of America, a podcast where we bring together great Catholic men doing interesting things. And today I have with me Silas Mähner. Hi, Silas.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Great. So this is, I think, the first time where I've been able to interview somebody that was also here in Nashville. You're kind of in the cool, fast-growing part of town. I'm out in the suburbs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it is pretty great. I don't know how fast growing it is. I know there's a lot of dispute over that online, but I really like it. We've been here for a few months, and it's been a great neighborhood. We just started meeting our neighbors, and it's got that. It still has that Southern hospitality of sitting around talking too much when you should be doing other things.
Absolutely. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself, your faith and your family growing up, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Silas Mähner. I'm from the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. I grew up where I always joke, you went outside and there was no neighbors. There were just trees. The trees became our neighbors in some ways because my family makes maple syrup. So they're in the thick of that right now. But I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, big Catholic family. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. So there's a little bit of extra responsibility there. But my dad, to make the woods thing even more intense, my dad's a carpenter, so I grew up working with him in his cabinet shop, building things since I was, I'd say, 8 years old, roughly. I think I started working for him, and did that all throughout my life. I was homeschooled as well too, so just very different upbringing than probably a lot of people in America. But my faith was always very important to me. We actually ended up since about 6 years old going to the Latin Mass, which really helped form me a lot in a lot of ways because we had really good priests, and we would go to catechism on Wednesdays throughout the school year. And despite me hating school, I really enjoyed catechism, which I do credit to keeping me in the faith as I moved up and changed and grew in my life. But fast forward, I got into sales early on in my career. I skipped college entirely, but my godfather had said, "Hey, you should learn how to do sales if you want to run a business someday. You might as well make some money doing it." And did some insurance sales with Knights of Columbus. And eventually through, a very, I won't tell the whole story, but eventually ended up getting a job offer to move out to New York City, working in recruiting. So I moved out to New York, March 2nd of 2020, if you can imagine it. 2 weeks later, the whole world shuts down. I knew one person in the city. So it was relatively dramatic, but I ended up sticking around for 4 years, met my wife there. And, I mean, I can tell you that I can keep going and telling all of what I'm up to, but that's kind of like the origin story. And then fast forward, we eventually moved back to Wisconsin, and now we moved down to Nashville, where we hope to stay for the foreseeable future. And what I do to pay the bills is I run a recruitment consultancy called Earth Search, and I've got this project, which we'll talk about a little bit, called Catholic Founders.
Tell me a little bit more about the recruitment consultancy, which is a relatively new business, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the job I got recruited for out in New York was a recruiting company, and I knew nothing about recruiting. I knew nothing about renewable energy, which is what we were recruiting for, but I just wanted to move to New York. So I did that for 4 years, and throughout that whole time, I really wanted to start a business. I had wanted to start a business even before I moved out to New York City. I think the influences of my dad running his business are really what led me to know that was something I wanted to do. Like, even though he doesn't run a very large business, it's very small. Some people would even say it's a very small business, just him and his kids basically, and sometimes some part-time help. But I just really appreciated his ability to take off and be part of the choir and do these things. So I think that sort of freedom was just really inspiring to me, and I wanted that. So while I was doing recruiting for somebody else, I just kept asking myself, like, what could I build that is interesting? I was always consuming business book after business book, and trying to think of some, the next big startup, the next big Airbnb or Coinbase or something, right? And once I got married and I then realized I still wanted to do recruiting. I was like, or to do run my own business. I said, I'm not going to take some crazy risks. I'm going to do something that I know I have a really good skill at. I've been doing it for 4 years. So I'm going to start my own recruiting firm. So that started in the spring of 2024. I got to get my dates right. But it all started because I had kind of made the decision. Eventually, I'm going to do this. And, I was thinking, maybe 6 or 7 months later, I was going to do this. But uh, my godfather and one of my other mentors kind of randomly on the same day, I ended up talking to them and they both said, "What are you waiting for? You should just get started. It's not that hard. You've been successful at it for 4 years. Just, get started. File your LLC paperwork and start moonlighting at the bare minimum." So I did that. And then later that day, my boss and the founder of the company I was working for were like, "Hey, the new ownership, after we had been purchased, new ownership wants you to go back to doing a different job inside the company, one that I had intentionally left." And I was like, well, this is all a sign from God. I took it as a sign from God that this is the time to trust in him and to pull the trigger. So I left a couple weeks later. We found out we were expecting. So we had just moved. We were married within a year. We were expecting, and I started a business. I did all the things you're definitely not supposed to do. But so I started my own firm. It was originally called Earth Tech Talent, but it's called Earth Search now. And we help clean technology companies recruit salespeople and engineers in America. So this is kind of what we do. We do it for about half the price of other search firms, which is the only kind of nuance of how we approach it. But we just really love the technologies that we get to work with and the people we get to work with. So we're trying to kind of keep that humanity in recruiting as AI is effectively kind of decimating the human connection in so many ways. People are just getting bombarded with messages that, are very obviously not tailored to them. So that's what we're trying to combat.
Yeah, I can appreciate that because in the advertising world that I live in, AI has really transformed things. That's a nice way of putting it. AI is doing a lot of the work that people in advertising used to do. And now that you mention, of course, I can see that would be the case in recruiting, um, where relationships are still important. Humans want relationships. They want to like and to trust the people that they're going to go work for. So how does that look practically for you in the age of AI where it's transforming so much? How do you build a firm around that idea?
Well, in a lot of ways, I think it's actually just a boring answer. It's do the things that recruiters have always done, but just do them really, really well and focus on the human connection. I will say, I will caveat, there are a lot of very bad recruiters out there because it is an industry where you tend to find people like myself who didn't intentionally get into it. We just were, pitched on the opportunity and said, "Hey, you can make a lot of money doing this." Um, and these are for people who may not have had other careers lined up. They may not have been in finance already. They may not have been in other areas, but they thought, "Hey, I can make good money." And people who have some sort of human to human kind of like people skills, right? And the people who are really good at it build those relationships. The people who are not so good at it are just in it for a transaction because they're focused on, making a commission. But the way that we're doing it is we just believe that over time, recruiting is going to focus on niches. So if you become the person who knows all of the chemical engineers who work on this very particular type of technology in America, and that's going to be, let's say, 500 to maybe 2,000 engineers total, and that's it. One recruiter can know a very large number of those people. Excuse me. One recruiter can know a very large number of those people, and make sure that they can pick up the phone and call them, right? Rather than just getting some AI message in the future or getting a message on any platform. I think that is going to be cheapened more and more to the point where people are generally just super skeptical to reach out or to respond to a recruiter or to any message because they just don't know if it's human. But if I know those 500 engineers, I can pick up the phone and call them. And if they're not interested, their friends might be interested. And then you kind of develop this niche. Now, by doing that, there's an intentional kind of you have to have a willingness to say no to doing other things, which is really hard for a lot of recruiters to do because they kind of think that, oh, this small market's not big enough. But in reality, if you're the best at this very particular market, every time you get a new job opening, you just think, okay, I talked to literally, 5 or 10 people this past couple of weeks that I know are looking. And then I know that several of those are a perfect fit for that role. So I'm going to pick up the phone or I'm going to shoot them a text. And within a day, I'm going to have the search completely done. I'm going to be, done taking care of the search process. Then it's just a matter of managing the interview process. Whereas what's going on right now is you've got Juicebox and these other companies that are basically just trying to say, hey, use natural language to tell us what you're looking for in your recruiting process. And we're just going to go find them. And It's doing, I mean, people are achieving some success doing it. But to me, achieving success while using completely like AI stuff is not necessarily like good for them. They've got to hire, but I don't personally like that because I believe every human has dignity, has infinite dignity, and we want to have that human connection. We want to be inspired. We want to know the person on the other end. So maybe it works for mass hiring or for particular roles, but when it comes to hiring the absolute best people, I really think it's about relationships and just knowing the person on the other side of the phone.
My understanding of the recruiting business is that the hard part is finding the clients,
Yeah.
the people who need those jobs. So tell me how that's going.
For us, it's pretty good. So I also have, in addition to the Catholic Founders Project, I have another podcast that I've been running since 2021 called Clean Techies. And that has been very helpful because it's not the largest podcast out there in clean tech world by any means, but it's big enough that I've been able to continue getting on really, really kind of top-notch guests in the industry, people who are very well known. And through that, I build relationships with people. And then I can say, hey, by the way, if you guys ever need recruiting, like reach out to me, right? And that has been a big game changer. And I think this can be applied to just, I don't know who needs to hear this, but this idea can be applied to pretty much anything you do. If you are doing one thing well, you have to be the absolute best at it in order to be like standing out. But if you can do two different kind of really not related things well, then it's much easier to be elevated. Like you could be top 50% in one thing and top 50% in another thing, but because they're unique and you bring them together in one, you stand out a bit more, right? So in my industry, most recruiters are just constantly like picking up the phone and basically pestering hiring managers when they see a job opening come up. Say, hey, let me work on your job. And I have enough work that I don't have to pick up new jobs, right? I obviously want to continue growing the business, but I'm also not, I don't have investors. I don't have particularly greedy objectives. So I just grow the business as I can. And I do it through building relationships and being really focused on, hey, I'm only here to help you if you actually need help. Like I'm not going to try to convince you to let me work on a job where you already have a lot of really good applicants who are qualified, which is not always the case. It's often actually not the case. But point is, I'm only here to be helpful. I'm only here to do the thing that actually provides value. I'm not just trying to sneak in there and charge you 20, 30 grand for it, right? So for me, it's just build relationships with the podcast. I'm very fascinated by the technologies of the companies that I get to work with. So it's a natural reason. I see somebody make an announcement that they got a fundraising. I say, wow, like that's really interesting. Can you come on the podcast and explain it to me? I learn about it. And from there, it just builds those relationships and it kind of scales from there. It is an unscalable thing to an extent, but I personally enjoy doing it. And it's a great way to build a relationship without asking for something straight off the bat.
How many other people are working with you as recruiters?
In our team, we have 3 other dedicated recruiters and then a couple admin staff. But it's slow by slow. It's very day by day and how we grow the team. I'm very focused on quality, as you may have picked up. I do not want to sacrifice quality. So if it takes 7, 8 months to train somebody just to get to the very basics of being able to deliver on their own, I'm okay with that because I really do believe that quality is paramount in this industry.
And the industry you're in, what's the future look like for that? Because it's been heavily influenced by politics in the past. Hopefully we're past that. Hopefully it's going to be about authentic science going forward. But what do you think the future is like?
Yeah, I have many, many, many thoughts about this, but I will say that the short summary is it got clean tech in general. For anybody who's not familiar, it basically refers to building technologies or technologies in general that help you reduce your energy spend, or they increase circularity or sustainability. And it's not just for the sake of saving climate, right? There's manufacturing facilities that can save millions of dollars a year if they use different technologies because they can use less energy, they can use less water, they can recycle their water, their steam. There's so many things, right? So the idea of clean technology is not it's not inherently ideological. It's actually just efficiency based, right? Because if you can take something and make a lot more out of less, who wouldn't want to do that? What manufacturer wouldn't want to do that? What manufacturer wouldn't want to waste less of their materials, right? So fundamentally, the technology is not political. It did get politicized for a very long time because kind of I'll say it, crazy climate activists who are just like wildly like disrespectful to culture and society really made it give it a bad rap. And Trump comes in, he does a bunch of policy changes that kind of tamp down on climate in some ways. But in reality, what has happened is it just kind of washed out the not really serious people, and the best founders are still here. They don't necessarily call themselves clean tech or climate tech entrepreneurs anymore, but they are still winning massively because, you know, I have an example of a client in Houston that they make a bolt-on piece of hardware that goes onto commercial AC units, and it can remove the water vapor from the air prior to it entering the commercial into the HVAC system, which then reduces the building's energy spend by about 50%. It's just crazy savings. Who wouldn't want that, right? So that's an example. I mean, and what building doesn't want to save 50% on their electricity? So it's a clean technology. It's a climate technology. It could actually be also applied to carbon capture, but they're going bonkers. They have so many pre-orders of their product. They're not quite in full production, but everybody wants it. There's another company that uses microbes to help mine copper, which is in super short supply right now. So they can take an existing copper mine and roughly increase the production by about 10%. Most copper mines have a rough asset value of about $1 billion. So you're talking about adding another 10% production to this $1 billion asset, which is huge. And it costs almost nothing to do, right? You kind of sprinkle these engineered microbes in order so that you can get the copper extracted. So the future, to answer your question a little bit more directly, is everything will be clean technology at some point. I don't think we're going to refer to it. Somebody told me they pointed this out to me or reminded me of this analogy recently. It's like, we don't call software companies internet companies anymore, right? Everybody is default on the internet. And that's the same thing with clean technology. Like, you're not going to build something that is less efficient than other stuff, right? You might build things for speed, which may be less efficient. There's different things you can do, but overall, everybody wants things to cost less, to work better, and to just have a generally like better experience, right? If you think back to when the oil boom was coming, right? I always like to use this example. The crude oil, what very, very small percentages of it were used at first for actually producing things. Eventually, over time, they learned how to use pretty much 100% of the crude oil for different things. And the same thing is happening right now in different rocks and minerals. And we're also seeing during the same time, the oil boom, there's tons of air pollution, right? I don't know the exact stats, but people were really dying of like bad lung issues in some of these, like in like Philadelphia and some of these other cities. And they cleaned it up because they just didn't want that negative health risk. Now the health risks are low enough that it's hard to correlate. But eventually, I think that with this crunchy movement we're seeing, or the granola movement, whatever you call it, we're going to see more and more people say, hey, I want cleaner food. I want cleaner air. Like, I want all these things. And who doesn't really? Nobody just likes to be told that, they have to lose their freedom or they have to eat bugs to do it. Like, that's the whole issue that we ran into. So I'm very bullish on the space. I don't think a lot of people are or are aware of it, but that's nice for me because while everybody's out doing something else, focusing on AI data centers, I can focus on building my company while there's nobody else to compete with.
Yeah, just the AI data centers alone is a tremendous future for you.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Let's move on to talk about the other thing that you're doing that's exciting and got my attention when we first met at a conference in Atlanta. Tell me about Catholic Founders. What
Yeah.
you do there?
So Catholic Founders has the mission to transform America and make it a Catholic country, basically. And the way we're going to do that is through Catholic entrepreneurship. Because even if you run just a small, mom and pop brick and mortar business in your local town, you have substantially more influence on your community than the majority of regular employees, right? Even if you're an employee at a big, like JP Morgan or some kind of big bank or something, the amount of influence that you can exert is very, very large because in your community, you have relationships, right? This whole thing goes back to relationships, honestly. if you have a relationship and people recognize, hey, this guy or gal owns this business, there's an elevated sense of respect. Even if you're not a millionaire, even if you're not making tons of money, you interact with your customers, you interact with your employees, your suppliers. And if you are transformed by Christ, if you are fully living a Christian life where you let God transform and manage everything, the people around you will be impacted by it, whether you like it or not. You can't even prevent it from happening. If you're allowing God into your heart truly, people will notice your joy, and they will eventually ask themselves, like, why is that, right? Many people are just fallen away Catholics, or they're not very serious Christians at all. But by seeing that, it can be that seed that's planted that brings them back. So in a kind of like grand perspective, that's what we're up to. We're trying to help Catholics start and grow their businesses, and to do it in a way that helps them get to heaven through their business, not in spite of their business. Because I do believe that entrepreneurship is not at all about making money and having fast cars and all this stuff. Entrepreneurship is about leaning into what it means to be a co-creator with God. God is the creator, and he created us in his image and likeness. And that has nothing to do with our appearances, and it has everything to do with our nature. Our nature is, regardless of whether you're truly an entrepreneur or not, our nature is one of co-creator. We obviously see that in marriage with creating children, but in entrepreneurship, it's another form of it. Art is another form of it. All of these things are co-creation effectively. And I don't know how to explain this part so well, but there is this sort of mystery where God, he chooses to use us as his kind of his paintbrush in the world, or his instruments in the world. He wants to work through us, because if you think about the concept of the transcendentals, right? One of the core ones is unity. And the Holy Trinity is obviously perfect unity. It's three persons in one. We don't quite understand it, but there's that unity there. We as Catholics, when we receive the Eucharist, the body and blood of Jesus go into, and they get absorbed into our bloodstream. That is then pumped through our body, and it goes into our heart, and it transforms our heart, right? It can physically transform us. So we have Jesus literally inside of us. And that creates that sense of unity. And it just kind of, it really motivates me personally to know that in some way I'm directly connected to God, the creator of the universe. And if I just allow him to do his thing through me, he's going to touch people around me in ways that I don't even know. I may never know. Maybe at the end of time he'll tell us how we what our score was or whatever. but the point is, it's just so motivating to me that we can bring other people along on this journey. So that's what we're up to. And like the more brass tacks component of it is, we have a podcast called Catholic Founders. We interview Catholic entrepreneurs and figure out how are they doing, how are they integrating the faith into their businesses, and just maybe some of their own experiences. Then we have a newsletter that comes out every Monday called Saintly CEO, where it's usually just like really kind of brass tacks tactics on how to run your business like a saint. And we also usually list out a couple other Catholic entrepreneurs in there. And then we have a community. We have a paid community for anybody who is starting or growing their business, or who's already grown their business to a large extent, but wants to be part of a community of like-minded people. We always say that if you believe you are called to be an instrument of God's will in the world, you belong in the community. And that's how we're doing it. The component around getting people started, that's something we're still developing and growing, but it'll effectively look like coming to me and I'll do one-on-one coaching to just help you get started, refine your ideas, and grow. That's the high level of what Catholic Founders is. Glad to go into it in more detail.
Yeah, I like your reference of the creative aspect of human life, and certainly that's very intimately associated with entrepreneurship. Even in the garden, Adam and Eve had a job, right? That our Lord gave them to work the garden, to till their garden. That there was something there. Perhaps it was just maintenance. There was something there that our Lord intended for them to do, even in perfection. And of course, today in the fallen world, we have problems everywhere, problems and/or opportunities, for entrepreneurs. And certainly, America is a little bit unique in terms of our attitude about that. So there's certainly a lot to be done there, and yet to be an entrepreneur is difficult. especially in a culture like ours that has primarily been an education system of sit here, do
Yeah.
this, follow this rule, think this way, don't move too much, don't ask too many questions, stay in your seat, all this kind of stuff. Uh, Dive a little bit deeper if you can into the kinds of things that you're doing to help Catholics who either are starting on that entrepreneurial journey or they're thinking about it.
Yeah. I think the number one thing is helping people feel that it's okay, giving them the permission, so to speak, because I don't know about you, but growing up, entrepreneurship and the internet culture, I'm even though I technically am Gen Z, I didn't grow up with the internet. We didn't have internet growing up. My dad refused to have us at our house, so I don't always understand the memes, but the point was I did eventually start getting exposed to this like kind of hustle culture where everybody's like, oh, I'm making a bunch of money, and then I have a boat and I've got a Lamborghini or whatever, and it didn't there was nowhere that I was really exposed to, at least in popular culture, that entrepreneurship is anything other than greed, right? It was all about flashiness and greed and vanity, which are not Catholic, or well, they're not virtues, right? We don't want to pursue those things. So I think that the idea of starting a business for many Catholics who are truly devout Catholics is one where they're kind of conflicted. Like, am I supposed to do this? Like, is it greedy to want to do more than just work a good job where I can provide for my family? And what is if the point of starting a business is not only to make money, then what is it, right? And so I think that's the first thing I'm trying to do is really help people recognize that you have permission to do these things. You have permission to be ambitious. We did not build the Catholic structures and all the stuff that we have. The infrastructure of Catholicism in America was not built by people who lacked ambition. It was built in many cases by people who were broke or very poor, but they did not lack ambition. They were willing to rally around, get their community involved and do things. And in the cases where they didn't have any money, they would spend their own time after work, slaving away, building churches, just making things happen. And this is something I find is generally lacking with a lot of Catholics is this sort of ambition to do things, because ambition is oftentimes associated with greed, and it's not. Ambition has nothing to do with greed. It only has to do with greed if you pursue it that way. So I think that's the number one thing. Is my goal is to just talk to as many Catholics who are thinking about starting a business or who are in the process of it, and just help them to realize that it's okay. And it's actually good if you do it in the right way. You can look at examples of people like Tom Monahan, who have created such. I mean, just think about the upside value that he has created. For anybody unfamiliar, Tom Monahan was the founder of Domino's, right? He started a business that became a franchisable business. Many people have been able to provide for their families with it. He eventually got very wealthy. He at one point owned the Detroit Tigers, but then had a kind of I guess you say a deepening of his faith, because he never truly left the faith, and he committed to giving it all away. So he was, I forget how wealthy he was, but he was a billionaire at one point, and started giving away his money and building churches and doing some just absolutely incredible things, including founding Ave Maria University in South Florida. But the point is, we need that ambition. We need people like Tom Monahan in the world. There's not many people like him that I'm aware of. I know there are some out there, but they're very quiet. And so I'm hoping to inspire these people by telling some of the stories of these lesser known, still ambitious, but maybe smaller Catholic entrepreneurs, to give my generation, or people who are like me from the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin or elsewhere, to have that desire to pursue it, not because of their own things, but because God is calling them to, right? One more example on this, and I'll move on to some other things we're doing, is if anybody thinks about the small town in America, right? A lot of us are from small towns where, there's like 5,000, 6,000 people, right? I grew up in a place where there's nobody, but the town nearby was about 5,000 people during night, and then during the day when the manufacturing facilities were operating, it's like 17,000. So a lot of people drive in. But these towns were built up by people who were successful entrepreneurs, not necessarily Catholic, but they were successful entrepreneurs, and they used that money to invest in their community. They provided jobs. They would, during harsh times, they would, provide jobs to other people for building, building buildings. I think about the Rockefellers too. I think during the Great Depression, they were building buildings just for the sake of employing people, right? So there was a sense of responsibility with money in the past, and we can reclaim that, because right now, the reason why there's so much pent up anger against billionaires and private equity firms is that they are doing it for the sake of wealth only, and they are not doing it for the sake of using the wealth to benefit the communities around them, whether that is the immediate community or maybe even further, broader to the nation, for example. So I'll digress on that part. But the second thing we're doing is, when I meet somebody, I am by nature a connector of people. It's probably why I ended up in recruiting. I'll meet somebody, I'll hear what they're working on, and within like a 15, 20-minute call, I can imagine, or I can think of 5 to 10 people that they should meet, and I make introduction to them so these people can guide them. These people have been through the same types of challenges. They can collaborate on things. Maybe they offer a service that can help them get over a barrier. And that's like the core thing I've been doing for now. The almost 2 years that we've been doing this is I just constantly introduce people to each other because they can help each other, right? There's so much time we spend building alone, doing things on our own, because we just don't know where to go. We don't, even asking an AI like, hey, how do I do this? That is oftentimes harder to implement the advice, even if it's accurate, because it's not coming from another human, right? There's no relationship there. There's no sense of like, man, that person has been through the sacrifice of and the challenges and the mistakes. I'm going to learn from them, and I'm going to get mentored by them. So that's a core thing I do. And then beyond that, we're also in the process of launching. By the time this comes out, it'll probably be launched already. We're launching this thing called the Faithful Steward, which is a private newsletter for Catholic investors to get deal flow from Catholic owned or primarily Catholic owned and run ventures. And that could be VC backed startups. It could just be, hey, I'm starting an HVAC or a plumbing business and I want some investors. Like, we are going to start connecting these investors and these builders so we can invest in each other, build up our businesses, use that profit to continue investing in each other, invest in our communities, build schools, and make the culture Catholic. So those are the core things we're doing. And in reality, I don't charge anything for any of those things right now, right? Being part of the community is the only paid part, and that's $100 a year to be part of. So I don't know how I'm going to make this work financially. Eventually, we'll figure it out. But the point is, those are the things I already do, and I do it because I just can't. I've talked to my wife about this all the time. Like, how am I supposed to manage running this business and doing Catholic Founders? And usually, when I hear advice from some of the world's greatest entrepreneurs on other podcasts, they're always like, you got to focus on one thing. You got to do only one thing. And so I asked myself, what am I willing to cut out? And the answer is definitely not Catholic Founders, and I can't shut off my income. So I'm going to keep doing both. So those are some of the core things. The first one is inspiring people and giving them the permission to build. The second one is helping them connect with the people who know how to get them past their barriers. And then thirdly, connecting them with capital whenever it's relevant or necessary.
You covered a lot of ground there. There were a couple of things I wanted to pick up on. We're looking at a future that is uncertain, or perhaps for some people depressing, as it regards the normal job process, your career, and so forth. I'm Gen X. We're not that far displaced from the boomers who grew up with this idea of, you pick a career, you're going to have that career for your whole life. You'll change jobs a few times, but your career is going to be pretty stable. And then less so for my generation. And of course, that's really begun to crumble. AI it looks like, will completely overturn that. Elon has said, and I think he's probably not off by very much, but he's talked about 50%, 80% unemployment as a result of AI and robotics in the coming years. In some of the industries I follow, that seems like it's maybe not that fast, but it's probably happening. That presents a lot of opportunity for Catholics who are looking at the challenges that those people will face, whether it's 80% in 5 years, like he says, or it's a different number. But there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to stop and say, okay, now what? Now what do I do? And maybe it means moving away from a big city into a smaller town. a lot of the population has moved from those smaller towns, from those little counties into the bigger areas in recent decades. What do you think about all that?
So I have a couple comments. I'll try not to get completely distracted. My ADHD tends to wander, if you haven't noticed. The first comment I have is that I am actually more wildly excited for Catholic entrepreneurship now because of all this than I ever have been. And the core reasons are, we have, number one, this trend. There's two reasons. So if I struggle to find the second reason, remind me. The number one reason is we have this current trend where corporations have been focused on profit alone. I mean, people will argue against me on that, by the way, but it's true. They have been focused on hitting their quarterly profits, because a lot of them are publicly traded, for decades. That is what has led to the destruction of our food system. It's what led to the cheapening of our products. And I'm not anti-capitalist. I understand that there's a lot of benefits. You think about Amazon and the fact that, when I lived in New York City, I didn't want to have to spend, $3,000, $4,000 just to furnish my apartment lightly. I was able to spend a couple $100, get some Amazon stuff delivered. And, when I left, it was not hard to disassemble and move it. Right. So I understand there's benefits to it. Okay. But generally speaking, we have gone to this culture of cheapening everything and focusing on the bottom line at all costs. Now, what that does is, if you put this in the context of craftsmanship, right? My dad's a carpenter, so I think about this a lot, right? If you're going to build a cabinet and you want it to be a good, sturdy cabinet that lasts a long time, you're going to use good stuff, and you're going to use extra screws. You're going to use glue. You're going to do all the things that are better than just like the bare minimum, right? But eventually you want to cheapen that. You want to increase your margins. So you start cheapening this a little bit, right? The brand is still well known at the beginning, but eventually it starts to deteriorate to the point where, hey, like, you just installed my cabinets 3 months ago and the doors are falling off. Like, what's going on? And it was all a short-term gains perspective. This has been going on for, I would argue, basically ever since probably the 50s, right? Like, we started out with relatively like a lot of care about the quality of products. And it just slowly but surely kind of like deteriorates to the point where people are, I see it all over the internet. People want quality things. They're returning to this idea of old money, where I have a piece of furniture that I'm going to pass down to my children or to my grandchildren, right? They want to build a house that's sturdy, that's made of brick, that's not just going to, get demolished in 20 years, right? They're doing things, and they're desiring things that are enduring and that are lasting. And we also have this thing where, let's say, for example, the pushback against private equity. Private equity goes and they buy a bunch of of single family houses. It drives up the cost of housing, and people are really upset. This has all gone on so long that even non-Catholics, right, just the average population, they look at these things. I also give the example of food, right? The food system, they constantly cheapen it and you use chemicals, and now we're realizing how sick it's making us, right? All of these things have happened so long that the average population says, we're done. We want good things again, right? I think it's hilarious watching people with these testing kits going into grocery stores and just like testing food and saying, hey, guess how many chemicals or how much, heavy metals are in these things. And I think Florida was doing something interesting with this too. But the point is, now the people are so upset and they're done with it, right? What does that mean? What does that mean for us? And fundamentally, what have those companies been doing? Let's say what those companies have been doing is focus on ROI at all cost. But in reality, what they've been doing is they've been doing something that is vice. It is not good. It is not virtuous. It is producing goods that are not true. They're not as advertised, right? They say this thing is going to do this thing, but it doesn't, or it doesn't last as long as they make it seem. That is a fundamental lie, and people want truth. If we as Catholics integrate virtue and truth into what we do, so we market things for what they are. I'm not saying you have to make the highest quality product, but don't say it's the highest quality product when it really is like a bottom shelf type of thing. We market things as truth, and we do things with virtue. People want that because it's going to have long-term impacts. If you want to build a business that your great grandkids are going to continue running, you're going to want to build something that never, ever falters on quality and doing the right thing and doing it as well as you can. That's why I'm excited about all of this stuff with AI and nonsense going on, because it's not just the AI component. It's also just the cheapening of, as I mentioned. But we have an opportunity because nobody else has morality around recognizing that each human has infinite dignity and they deserve to be respected and told the truth. They deserve to be to have some love put into the products they've made, right? Our food should be made with the intention to feed people, not to make a profit, right? It changes the disposition of the person themselves as they're making it, right? There's so many components of this that just really excite me. To take it to AI a little bit more specifically, I think that it's genuinely very, very exciting to see that even non-Catholics are starting to question. And I can't take credit for this idea. I heard this from Dominic Tiroli, who runs Dominus Lab. He was saying that, I think it was him, maybe it's Lucas. There's two guys I talked to about AI at one point about this. That humans have had a monopoly on knowledge work for so long that they kind of wrap their identity up in it. Now that knowledge work and white collar work is being in a lot of ways taken away from them, they're asking themselves, well, what is my identity? Like what is my value? And the truth is, we will, hopefully people will understand this. They'll start to realize that I as a human have dignity and value regardless of my profession, right? So I'm hopeful that some of these things will lead to a true enlightenment, right? Like not the fake enlightenment that we had, but a true enlightenment of what it means to be human, and that they'll lean into that, and that they'll start to see their brother and their sister as another human who has dignity rather than as just a number or as just some person who can help them advance their careers. That's my hope for some of this, which is, if the positive outcome is only possible if it gets really negative for a bit, right? With the AI and job layoffs and all this stuff. However, there is a silver lining. And again, I'm not a statistician, so I don't know how to say how well this will go, but I do believe, and I'm seeing this personally with my friends and people that probably would have never started businesses, because AI makes it so much easier to kind of get a base level understanding of almost any topic. People are more comfortable starting businesses that they have never worked in. They know how to file the LLC paperwork. They know how to do basic accounting. They're doing all these very, very basic things to get started and to start building. My hope would be that people will start to lean into their passions and build things that are, genuinely well crafted, and they'll focus on this market, because there will always be a market for the cheapest, right? It's not going to go away, but there will still be a market for people who want to buy things that are well produced, and they're going to want to call the business that has humans picking up the phone, right? For so long, we've had, choose from this menu option thing. Yeah, we'll have an AI version of that soon, but it's still not a human, right? It might be slightly better experience, but you and I both know we'd rather call the bank and have a human pick up and say, hey, it's actually just happened to me today. I had to call the bank and they actually picked up because I know the bank. And we like that a lot more, right? Zuhair from Autoglass Experts in Charlotte, he has his people pick up the phone when customers call, and guess what? They get more customers because of it. Yes, they lose money because they're having humans pick up the phone, but they make money in the long term because humans want to do business with other humans. We're not here to do business with robots. It's fundamentally a human exchange. So I don't know if this is kind of what you're looking for, but I generally think that there's some very positive things that can come out of this, but I'm not going to be one to say that there's not going to be any downside. I just really hope that as Catholics, we can set the tone for how to treat these things, because we're not here trying to lay off, 60% of our workforce just to increase profit, right? We would say, okay, if we are going to be facing a competitor who is going to do that to reduce their costs or to increase their margin, we're not going to do that. What's going to happen? Okay, they're gonna reduce their costs to compete with us. Okay, so we now need to think ahead and say, how can we make our existing employees more equipped to do more things with the products and the tools that we have, or how can we help them start their own businesses so that in the future we actually can maintain the existing employees but do more, rather than having this negative mentality or this kind of zero-sum mentality of we're going to increase margins. We're actually going to improve our people, and we'll have a better outcome. So I think it's very imperative at this time in history for Catholics to be leading the way in business, so that human morality, or I should say human dignity and human flourishing is front and center, because people who just care about money do not care about human flourishing whatsoever. Like we've seen it with so many examples. So that's a very long rant, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, good stuff. You talked about Catholic founders, all the good work that you're doing there. Who would be a good fit for you? Who's the kind of person that would connect with you, with the group that you're building, with the things that you're doing? Again, most of it at no cost.
Yeah.
And is really going to be able to excel with your help.
So number one, I would say any Catholic who either runs a business or is thinking about starting a business should 100% go follow our podcast and newsletter. It's catholicfounders.com. You can find everything there. It's free, completely free. All the good content is free. There's no reason why you shouldn't. And I know your inbox might be full, but trust me, it's good stuff. The other people who should join our Catholic Founders Guild, I would say, are a couple categories. One would be you are devout Catholic and you want to start a business. You're not necessarily sure why, but you just feel drawn to this idea of building something. Come be part of this, okay? We will help you do this in a way that is completely in line with your faith. We're not, there's so many people in the group who have publicly said in our discussions, like, profit is not the main motive. I have a friend of mine who his objective is just to employ as many people as possible. He doesn't care about how much money he makes. He just wants to employ lots of people. That's one group. Is you're really committed to the idea of starting something. Come join us. You'll be surrounded by other people who are going through that journey, and people who can help you clarify what product you're going to offer, how much you're going to offer it for, how you're going to go to market, all of those things. Most of those things happen for free as just part of the group discussion. You can meet people. Okay. The other person would be any Catholic entrepreneur who is perhaps feeling a little bit stranded, right? They've got lots of Catholic friends and they might have entrepreneur friends who aren't Catholic, and they can't necessarily relate to either of them super well because Catholics who aren't entrepreneurs don't want to sit there and talk about their businesses, and their entrepreneurship friends, they only care about money in a lot of cases if they're not Catholic or at least Christian. Those are the other two people. Those are the two categories of people I would suggest joining. And you can sum those up into, I believe I'm called to be an instrument of God's will in the world through running a business of some sort.
Great definition. Now, you can't help everybody. You can't work with everybody. Inevitably, there are going to be some people that are not a good fit for your method, your process, your ideas, your temperament, whatever it might be. Who are those people?
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things. It'd be the people who just want to get rich. If you're just if you want to build a business only for the sake of building tons of wealth, and there's no other reason for that, then probably not a fit, right? If you're the kind of person who says, I want to get rich so that later on I can tithe and do nice things with my money, it's probably not for you, because fundamentally we should all be giving even on the ride up, right? The other type of people who it's not good is if you're just not willing to put in the work. I think a lot of people don't understand that entrepreneurship requires sacrifice. I haven't really reflected on this too much, but as I'm saying this, I'm realizing, because we're in Holy Week as we record this, that sacrifice is basically equal to love, and entrepreneurship requires sacrifice. So there's got to be some connection there. I haven't made that connection, but you have to recognize that it's not all fun and games. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It is hard work, and you have to be willing to put in that effort. Do not assume that you're going to build a business so that you can just live a nice, easy, cushy life. If anything, it's harder than having a job. And then I would say the other people that I wouldn't want to be part of this are people who think ambition is bad. People who would say, like, oh yeah, you're supposed to just live a docile life and live in the country in the middle of nowhere and do your thing, and just go to church and that's it. I do think that there's a way to do that in a way that is truly in line with God's will for you, and some people are called to that. But if that is what you think, if that's how you think, you're probably not a fit for this. I would say you're definitely not a fit for this. So those are the kind of three archetypes.
Silas, we've covered a lot of ground in the last hour. I'll give you the final words. What else would you like to say to the Catholic men who might stumble across this podcast and listen to what we've been talking about?
First of all, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this. I know I talk fast. It's because I'm very, very excited about all these things. But the final thing I would say is, in this world of a void of meaning, all of us have been told, go to college, get a job, do this thing, like, make sure you're well established before you get married. Don't worry, don't have kids until you're really like certain, all these things. We're really searching adventure, especially men, right? We're searching for some kind of calling. And in some cases, we don't really think about our faith as that sort of adventure. We don't think about our faith as that calling. But we do know a couple things. We know, number one, that we are called to go to heaven. Like, we are called to strive for heaven. That's the universal calling to holiness. We all have it. Then after that, we have our vocation calling. We're either called to the religious life or to be married and have kids. And then beyond that, there's our secondary vocation. And that is super fascinating to think about, because your soul, everyone's soul, was created by God specifically at this time in history to your particular parents and your geography. And by the time you were 5, most of your beliefs in life were established before you ever had a conscious choice about it. Your interests, what you want to pursue, all these things were effectively like given to you as the default settings for you specifically. And if you don't think that God gave you all of those things for a very particular reason, you're kidding yourself. Each of us is called to go on a great adventure, and there's this mysterious connection that we have to explore as Columbo, as Sherlock Holmes. We have to like look for the clues to figure out what exactly is God calling me to do with my life, given who I was born to, when I was born, all of these things. I wasn't born, at the time of Jesus. I wasn't born 1,000 years from now in the utopia future or whatever might be. I was born here, and I was born to these family, and I have something I'm specifically called to do inside of this. And ask yourself what that is. And it may not be entrepreneurship. That's fine. But whatever it is, lean into it, because that is what God wants you to do. The world is incomplete without you leaning into your gifts and leaning into those things, those talents that God placed in your stewardship, to go and to multiply them. So that was my calling to you. It's like, there is an adventure waiting that is only an adventure you can go on. If you're playing Super Mario Brothers, it can't be Luigi being the hero in that one. That's Super Mario, right? You cannot have the other person play your game. It is your particular mission that you are called on, and only you can answer the call. So sitting around and being lazy means just letting some damsel in distress, not be saved, etc. So that's my last call to people, is we forget about this because we're so distracted. Just remember that there is a great adventure waiting for every single one of you that is unique for each of you.
Great stuff, folks. I've been with Silas Mähner here, Nashville, Tennessee, Catholic founders. A lot of great stuff going on. We'll include links so you can get in touch with Silas, as always. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff.